I just want to first clarify that, yeah, I put Shappy in the thumbnail, I drew that, but the thing is that this is not a Shappy defense video like how the thumbnail would seem like. This is more so to have a greater conversation about why people might see his art style as wrong. I will go more in depth on what I think about his content and his art style and things that he's been doing later, because overall, if Shappy didn't do any of the evil actions that he did, like false allegations against Rith or things like trying to wipe out people's channels, then I wouldn't have a problem with him. But I want to mostly talk about the greater issue with kids' art styles being used for adult animations. So one, can kids' art styles be used for more adult cartoons? Answer is obviously yes, right? We've seen cartoons like South Park, we've seen cartoons like Happy Tree Friends, we've seen stuff like Close Enough, and we've also seen stuff like Big Mouth. These are all adult cartoons, but they have a childish art style, or they directly are derivative of another art style from something that was originally for kids in the case of Close Enough. And I personally don't see any issue with this at all, even if the jokes of these were of Shappysway's kind of leaning. I wouldn't really see any issue with it, because again, it's clear that this is for adult content, or for adults based on how it's written. And I'll get into that a little later. Two, can a childish art style add to the adult show? I would say absolutely, though if it's for humor, it would be for kind of a short-term cause. For example, I want to look at South Park and Happy Tree Friends. With South Park, whenever you watch the show and you don't know anything about it, like let's say South Park is new, you don't know anything about it, you're a parent, you let your kid watch it, and then you come in and watch it, and it's like, holy crap, I thought this was a kid's show, because you look at it, it looks like it's for kids because of the simplified characters, simplified eyes, the kind of cruddy animation. It looks like a kid's show. But given everything that's and also the fact that they're kid main characters, but given everything crazy that's happening in the show, all of it adds together and makes the show funnier. Same as Happy Tree Friends. The entire appeal of Happy Tree Friends is the fact that it looks like it's a show for toddlers. But the gimmick is that actually it's a really violent and disgusting show where these cartoon animals are being killed. So in that way, again, depending on the context, it can be done well. There's a perfect example of this not working out well that I know of in another piece of media, but I will talk about that shortly. 3. If kids' art styles can't be used for adult cartoons, then why? The simple answer would be that it may attract children to watch the show who don't know any better. Now, you could also say that a lot of shows that look like they're for kids, they have warnings like, this is MA, beware, kids shouldn't watch this, or this is rated T for teen because it has some blood in it, stuff like that. But no kids is actually listening to that. I mean, when I was a kid, I never actually listened to any of that kind of stuff. And when I was a kid, I've definitely seen cartoons I wasn't supposed to, simply because I was on the internet. And that's just kind of how it works. Kids are just going to watch whatever they want to if it's available to them. And that's why I don't think this argument really holds any weight, in my personal opinion. Kids are going to watch the shows that they want to watch anyway nowadays. What really needs to happen is the people who supply their entertainment, they need to actually be watching what is entertaining them, as opposed to just letting them have free reign and then blaming the people who make the TV shows that look the way they do. So, is writing and the contents of media more important than the style used to convey it? The answer is absolutely yes. With something like King of the Hill, for example, no kid would watch that because it's an adult show in the clearer sense of being an adult show. It's really slow. A lot of people find it, even adults find it, pretty boring. It doesn't have a lot of crazy colors and stuff like that. And because of how it's written, it wards off children from actually watching the show. I'm not saying all adult shows should be written like that, because King of the Hill is pretty special. But what I am saying is that how a show is portrayed is more important than the art style. Because if King of the Hill looked like Bluey, then I'm sure it still have a very similar or the same audience as it had back when it was new. Similar sort of thing is true for even if a art style is like Berserk level or something like that, and the writing is like Bluey. If the writing is like Bluey, kids are going to be watching it, and maybe adults might watch a little bit of it in order to enjoy the artistic merit of what it is. Similar is true if Bluey was written like Berserk, then adults would be watching Bluey because of the contents of the show, and not necessarily because the art style is what's drawing them in, if you know what I'm talking about. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you can write your show to be suitable for adults in an adult way, similar to King of the Hill, then kids just won't watch it because it seems boring or because it's dealing with concepts that are too complex for them to understand. This can also work in a very malicious way, and I've only ever seen it be done once, where the art style and the kind of writing culminates into something that is actually very disgusting and will make kids read something that they definitely shouldn't be reading. And the only comic that I've ever seen do this, or piece of media, is this. It's a webcomic called Sandra and Wu. It looks like, basically, I'll put some images up on screen of what it looks like. It looks like Calvin and Hobbes, right? You know, or Peanut comics, kind of. It looks like it's inspired from those two, and it reads like, especially at the start, just like those two comics. So you'd think that it's a wholesome, fun kids comic, and it has a lot of regular jokes that are funny some of the time, but it also has a ton of sex jokes involving the kid characters in the exact same childish tone. So effectively, if a kid read this, they'll think that these jokes are normal, even though they're sex jokes involving 12-year-old type characters. So that's pretty disgusting, and this is the only kind of instance where I've actually seen this done. Who I'm going to talk about very soon, Shappysway, does not do this at all, and I've never seen another piece of media that does something like this ever. So, number 5, my personal conclusion. What matters more is the writing and tone than the art style, as opposed to it being the other way around. Shows aren't rated the way that they are because of their art styles. They're rated the way that they are because of the jokes in them and how it's written. Smiling Friends sure can look like a kid's show. It can look, it kind of does look like something that you might find on Cartoon Network, but it's not a Cartoon Network show. It's an Adult Swim show. Same as something like Super Jail, for example. That show looks like it's for Cartoon Network, but because it looks a certain way doesn't mean that it is for that specific audience. I don't exactly understand why in this specific case of Shappy's content, people initially got mad at it. People initially got mad at it and mislabeled it as kids videos when they're not kids videos at all, because he labels them as such, and you can tell by the writing. Now, I'm actually going to directly be talking about Shappy for the rest of this video, because his whole situation is very interesting. And also, I just want to clarify that I'm not trying to throw any shade at specific YouTubers or anything, and in fact, I'm not a fan of any kind of leafy style videos at all. I just thought this was a very interesting sort of topic, because I've never seen a contention like this that was so widespread and popular. So, directly Shappy, 0. Disclaimer. This isn't necessarily a defense of Shappy's actions when it comes to him trying to wipe out channels and also the false allegations that he was doing, but instead more of a discussion starter for why exactly he was attacked viciously for what he was creating. He also says multiple times in multiple places that his videos are for adults. I think that right there is very important, and the most that he could probably do is add some kind of MA in the corner of his videos or something like that, or a disclaimer, that kind of thing. But I think that part of his jokes is the fact that if you first click on his videos, you don't realize how freaky they're actually going to be. And that when I initially watched his videos, I didn't expect it to be as insane as it actually is. I watched a few of his videos, I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell? Like, I was super shocked. Of course, after a while, the jokes stop being that funny, and especially as a Christian, I have very low tolerance for sexual jokes. I don't find them very funny because of my religious disposition. But still, also, I just want to talk about the fact that for some reason he drew Jesus with all his OCs around him as if he's a Christian or something like that. Now, I don't know if he is a Christian or not, but I'm just going to assume that that is possibly disrespect towards the faith, and I think that's kind of insane. You know, that's a little ridiculous given the kind of videos that you make. So, 0.5. Quick counter. So, I've been seeing a lot of people say that Shappy should just age restrict his videos and make them 18 plus if they're for grown-ups. Here's my counter to that. Shappy shouldn't make his videos strictly 18 plus because that kills their ability to be recommended by new people. On top of this, there are a lot of already cartoons on YouTube that are directed towards adults. They have cursing, they got sex jokes, they got all kinds of, they got violence, all that kind of stuff. And they are clearly directed towards adult people, but they don't ever age restrict their content, and that's not expected of them. And my main wonder is a symmetry breaker for other cartoons like that the fact that their art styles are different? Is that what it is? If so, I think that's just ridiculous given the previous points that I've already said with how writing matters more than art style. And again, as a shorts creator, Shappy fully relies on having videos that can actually get out there into the world. So him making his own videos neutering them, making them strictly 18 plus doesn't really make any sense. 1. What makes Shappysway any different from other similarly adult cartoons? Now, I think the difference between Shappy and other adult cartoons is just the contents of how he's joking. A lot of adult cartoons, they have a variety of different jokes, sex jokes sometimes, sure, but whenever we look at Rick and Morty, it has a lot of meta jokes, it has a lot of science jokes and stuff like that. It's a funny show in a lot of well-rounded ways. Same as South Park, it'll get really crazy, it'll tell all kinds of different jokes and stuff like that. But Shappysway's content is like Happy Tree Friends in that they only do one thing. Happy Tree Friends, the whole thing, I'm not going to show any because it bothers me, but the only thing that they do in Happy Tree Friends is show extreme gore of their child characters and a child art style, and that's the entire appeal. Because it looks like a child, because they look like child characters that would appeal to 6-year-olds, them being dismembered is what's really disturbing, and that's what makes it funny, I think. I personally don't like Happy Tree Friends, and I personally also don't really like Shappysway's content because, like Happy Tree Friends, again, it's just that but sexual and to an absurd degree usually. And I'm guessing that since his main type of joke is sex jokes that are very graphic a lot of the time, but sometimes they are funny, a lot of the time they just miss, but I'm thinking that that's why people decided to jump on this sort of thing and say like, hey guys, Shappy, this guy's a freak, he's making, look at this kid, look at this content he's making for kids, even though he stated multiple times that it's not for kids. The best, again, and I also want to make the point that at the end of the day, the best a cartoon can usually do on any sort of platform or streaming or anything on TV is state that it's for adults. What actually has to happen is the parents have to be involved in knowing what the kids are actually watching. They have to actually be able to restrict it themselves. Like, for example, you probably wouldn't blame like the people who made The Simpsons because a kid could possibly watch The Simpsons and get attached to watching The Simpsons, because that's absurd. It would be absurd to expect adult cartoons to be locked to only selling to people online or being accessible to those online who are 18 plus. And we also have to remember the fact that you can just easily lie about your age. Like, for example, on my Battle Catch channel, I have like 2.6k subscribers, something like that, and a nice Discord server. And I check my view rates, and it says that most people are 18 to 25, while on my Discord server, the age range is like 14 to 16 to 17. People just lie about their age all the time online, and even if Shappy did make his stuff strictly 18 plus, it wouldn't really change that much or the kid's ability to actually see the content. That's why I don't exactly understand this criticism that he keeps getting. I personally find it to be very dishonest, since most YouTubers also know the fact that making a video restricting it to 18 plus would kill its ability to get out there, especially for, again, a shorts creator. So one, what makes Shappy any different? Okay, so to answer this question, I think that it's just the contents of his jokes and that he mainly sticks to one thing, and so people actually didn't really have a real contention with this content. It was just, maybe they did have a real contention with this content actually. This is my guess. It's either one, someone had a real contention with this content, and so they made the initial video that started all of this, drama and stuff like that I'm observing from from my bench far away from all this crap, and just as I take notes and stuff like that. I'm assuming someone maybe did have a real contention, or someone saw this as an opportunity to be like, okay, I can make a lot of money if I talk about these animations and spread the falsehood that they are for kids because they look like they're for kids, even though that's blatantly a lie. But anyway, so 2, if Shappysway is in the wrong for this, then why is what he's doing any different from cartoons of the past like Happy Tree Friends or South Park? Again, my assumption is just the fact that it's on YouTube, they're shorts, and also he doesn't have in the videos strict markers like MA, TVMA, you know what I mean, for all of his shorts. I guess he could do that. I guess that could be pretty helpful. I don't know, but it's not like that's gonna stop kids from watching his content or anything like that. Whenever I saw stuff like that when I was a kid, I didn't give a crap. I just kept watching this stuff. I mean, I was watching Berserk and stuff like that when I was like 15, 16. And I definitely wasn't supposed to be doing that. But guess what? People around that age and younger are just going to be watching content they're not supposed to be if it's on the internet. And that goes for any animation or anything like that. This is exactly why I find this criticism of Shappy's stuff kind of absurd and hypocritical if you want to really hold to believing that sort of thing. So 3, how could Shappy have gotten out of this silly drama? So first of all, okay, so I'm just gonna imagine it to where it's like this is ground zero, like this is when this all starts, you know what I mean? I think that the best course of action, that he obviously has been doing the worst possible things he can do. I would actually call his actions literally evil. This guy attempted to wipe out multiple channels, and he spread false allegations of one of the YouTubers, Rith. I don't really watch the guy. I'm not a fan of leafy stuff, as I said earlier probably, but he did spread false allegations of this guy, of him being a pedophile, which is very insane, and he tried to wipe out people's channels. So all Shappy should have done was just kept it in comment replies. That's all he should have done. That's literally it. If he just kept it in comment replies, people would have still been making videos off of his new videos coming out, and they also would have been making the videos about his content. And so Shappy would have just been completely fine by just commenting on other people's channels instead of taking these very absurd and horrible lengths to try and silence others for talking bad about them. Now I understand how annoying it would be to have a lie go out about you about how you make kids content when you clearly say that you don't do that, that you have in your description that you don't do that, that in every video you make jokes in a way for adults. You do that in every single video, and people still label you as a kids content creator because your art style is reminiscent of Happy Tree Friends, which was an adult show where gore happened, where I honestly could understand and see how annoying that is, especially as a Christian, because a lot of people do assume specific things about me even though they don't know anything about me. They just see a surface level sort of thing and they're like, okay, I can assume a million things about this. And that's the exact same thing that has been happening to Shappysway. It's not like he's innocent or anything. I just can understand where the anger comes from, but I don't understand the actions and why he's doing what he's doing. For my conclusion, Shappy is simply another cartoonist that creates cartoons in a childish art style as a way to shock those who initially watch his videos, similarly to Happy Tree Friends. That's all Shappysway really is, and he's not targeting his art, he's not targeting his content towards kids or something like that. He's not trying to get on YouTube Kids. The guy curses in his videos. He has very graphic sex jokes and everything. I'm personally not a fan, but I will defend its existence because I believe that things like Happy Tree Friends, you know, other cartoons that look like they're for kids, South Park, stuff like that, I believe that those cartoons are completely fine, and I see it as inconsistent logically to be like, oh yeah, Shappysway, this specific one is wrong, but these other ones are okay. For what reason? What is the symmetry breaker here? What we all know what will happen was because of Shappy's absurd actions of him trying to wipe out multiple YouTube channels falsely via copyright claims. obviously it's clear that he's going to have his whole channel wiped out or something like that, or he's just simply, if that doesn't happen, he's going to simply fade into obscurity once, probably not, actually he's probably not going to fade into, he's either going to be fine or his channel is going to be wiped out. I think I'm leaning towards his channel is going to be wiped out personally, because these are very egregious and insane actions to do. So yeah, that's that. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this made you think a little bit more about cartoons. I'm not a drama guy, I just thought that this whole situation was extremely interesting to comment on as a person who disagrees with a lot of the common contentions against this person, aside from his actions, of course, I mean content wise.